Homeless Apache widow seeks work, but the rancher asked, "Can you be the mother my daughters need?" She had been walking since early morning, her feet sore and dusty, her shoulders tired from carrying the small bag that held everything she owned. The sun was already high, but she did not stop. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering things she was trying very hard to survive. Her name was Lena. She was an Apache widow, though she rarely said those words out loud. To many people, those words carried labels, judgments, and cold looks. To her, they carried memories she kept locked deep inside her heart. Once, she had a husband who laughed easily and spoke gently. Once, she had a small home where the fire was always warm at night. Once she had a place where she belonged. That life was gone now, taken by sickness and time, leaving her alone in a world that did not wait for grieving women. After her husband passed, everything slowly fell apart. Without steady money, she lost her home. Some relatives tried to help, but they were struggling too. Others turned away, afraid of burden or gossip. Before she knew it, Lena was sleeping wherever she could find safety. Sometimes it was behind old buildings, sometimes near churches, sometimes under open sky. She learned how to be quiet. She learned how to watch people's faces and know when it was time to leave. She learned to keep her pain hidden, because showing it never brought kindness, only questions she could not answer. That morning, someone at a small town market told her about a ranch outside the county line. The owner might need help, the woman said, not unkindly but not hopeful either. It's a long walk. Lena thanked her and started walking. The road stretched endlessly, dust rising with every step. The land around her was wide and open, grass bending in the wind, fences running far into the distance. It reminded her of stories her grandmother once told, stories about endurance, about women who survived by walking forward even when their hearts were breaking. She repeated those stories in her mind as her legs grew heavy. When the ranch finally came into view, her heart began to pound. Large gates stood open, wooden posts worn by time. Beyond them, a long dirt path led toward a farmhouse and wide fields. Horses moved slowly in the distance, calm and steady. Lena stopped just outside the gate. She smoothed her hair with trembling hands and adjusted her clothes, which were clean but old. She did not want to look desperate, even though desperation was all she felt. Asking for help always came with the risk of rejection, and rejection hurt more when you had nothing left. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. As she walked closer to the house, she noticed how quiet everything felt. Not lonely, but still. A place where life continued without noise. She liked that. Near the barn, she saw a man working alone. He was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the slow confidence of someone used to hard labor. His clothes were dusty, his hat pulled low against the sun. He did not look up right away. Lena stood there for a moment, unsure if she should speak. Her voice felt stuck in her chest. Finally, she gathered her courage. "Excuse me," she said softly. The man turned. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. He studied her quietly, not in a way that made her feel small, but in a way that felt careful, as if he was trying to understand her without words. "Yes," he asked. "My name is Lena," she said. "I was told you might need help. I can clean, cook, mend clothes, care for animals, anything." She waited, her hands clasped tightly together. The man did not answer right away. He glanced toward the house, then back at her. She could see thoughts moving behind his eyes, like he was weighing something heavier than work. "I'm Thomas," he said at last. "I don't usually hire strangers." Lena nodded. She had heard that before. "I understand," she replied. "I don't need much, just honest work." There was something in her voice, steady but tired, that made him pause. He had seen many people ask for work, but most came with excuses or demands. She came with nothing but dignity. "Come inside," he said finally. Her heart skipped, but she followed quietly. The farmhouse was simple and clean. No clutter, no decoration, just the basics of daily life. But something was missing. Lena felt it immediately. The house felt empty in a way that had nothing to do with furniture. As they stepped into the kitchen, two young girls peeked around the corner. Their eyes were curious but cautious. They held onto each other's hands like they were used to standing together against the world. Thomas cleared his throat. "These are my daughters," he said. "Emily and Rose." Lena smiled gently, lowering herself to their eye level without being asked. "Hello," she said softly. "It's nice to meet you." The girls did not speak, but they did not run away either. Emily tilted her head, studying Lena's face. Rose looked at her shoes, then back up again. Children always saw more than adults thought they did. Thomas watched closely. He was used to people feeling awkward around his daughters, unsure how to speak to them, how to act in a house shaped by loss. But Lena moved naturally without trying to impress or force kindness. "I won't take much of your time," Lena said, standing again. "If there's nothing for me, I'll go." Thomas hesitated. Something inside him stirred, something he had ignored for a long time. He had not planned on hiring anyone. The ranch ran fine with his own work, but the house was another matter. "I could use help with cleaning and meals," he said slowly, "just for a while." Relief washed over her face, though she tried to hide it. "Thank you," she said simply. As the day went on, Lena worked quietly. She cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, and helped prepare a simple meal. She did not ask questions. She did not complain. She worked with care, as if the house mattered to her. The girls stayed nearby, watching her. When she washed dishes, they sat at the table. When she folded clothes, they brought her small items without being asked. Slowly, the distance between them faded. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Lena prepared to leave. She did not assume anything beyond the day's work. Thomas noticed. "You don't have a place to stay, do you?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I manage." He knew what that meant. "There's a small room near the kitchen," he said. "You can stay there tonight." "If you want." Tears burned her eyes, but she held them back. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, lying on a real bed for the first time in weeks, Lena stared at the ceiling. She listened to the quiet sounds of the house, the wind outside, the soft steps of children, the steady presence of a man who carried his own grief. For the first time in a long while, she did not feel invisible. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know how long this kindness would last. But as she closed her eyes, she felt something unfamiliar and fragile settle in her chest. Hope. And she guarded it carefully, knowing how easily it could be taken away. Morning came quietly to the ranch. Soft light slipped through the small window of the room where Lena slept. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she felt the mattress beneath her and the clean air around her, and memory returned gently instead of crashing down on her chest. She sat up slowly, careful not to make noise. She did not want to disturb anyone. Old habits stayed with her. When you had lived without a place of your own, you learned to take up as little space as possible. She washed her face with cool water and smoothed her hair back. She looked at herself in the small mirror on the wall. The woman staring back looked tired, but there was something new in her eyes. Not joy yet, but relief. Safety, even if it was only for one night. She stepped into the kitchen just as the sun rose higher. Thomas was already awake, pouring coffee into a mug. He looked up, surprised but not annoyed. "You're up early," he said. "I always am," Lena replied. "I can start breakfast if that's all right." He nodded. "The girls will be up soon." Lena moved carefully, quietly, as if the kitchen were a place of respect. She found simple ingredients and prepared a basic meal. Nothing fancy, just warm food made with attention. The smell filled the room slowly, gently. When Emily and Rose came in, rubbing their eyes, they stopped at the doorway. Something felt different. The kitchen felt warmer, alive in a way it hadn't for a long time. "Good morning," Lena said softly. Emily looked at her father. Rose held onto her sleeve. "It's okay," Thomas said. "She's helping us." Lena knelt again, keeping her voice calm. "I made breakfast. You can sit wherever you like." The girls exchanged a look, then climbed onto their chairs. They ate quietly at first. Lena did not rush them. She understood silence. She had lived inside it for too long. Thomas watched from across the table. He hadn't realized how tense the mornings had been until now. Usually he rushed through meals, worried about work, worried about doing enough. This morning felt slower, kinder. After breakfast, Lena began cleaning without being asked. She wiped the table, washed the dishes, and swept the floor. She moved like someone who had done this many times before, not as a servant, but as someone caring for a home. Thomas went outside to work, but his thoughts stayed inside the house. He kept glancing toward the window, unsure why. The girls followed Lena around as she worked. At first they stayed quiet. Then Rose spoke. "Do you know how to braid hair?" she asked. Lena smiled. "I do." Rose's eyes lit up. She ran to get a brush. Lena sat her down gently and worked slowly, explaining each step. Emily watched closely, then asked if Lena could show her too. By the time Thomas returned for lunch, the girls were laughing softly, their hair neatly braided. He stopped in the doorway, struck by the sight. Laughter had been rare here, not because he didn't love his daughters, but because grief had made him careful, afraid to feel too much. "Looks like you're busy," he said. Lena stood. "I hope that's all right." "It is," he replied, meaning more than he said. Over the next few days, a quiet routine formed. Lena helped with meals, cleaning, and small tasks around the ranch. She worked steadily, never cutting corners. She spoke kindly but did not push herself into conversations. She listened more than she talked. The girls began to seek her out. They showed her their drawings, asked her questions, followed her footsteps from room to room. At night, when storms passed through or bad dreams came, they knocked on her door instead of standing alone in fear. Lena comforted them without replacing what they had lost. She never spoke badly of their mother. Instead, she listened when they shared memories. She treated their grief as something real, not something to rush away. Thomas noticed everything. He noticed how the house smelled like warm food instead of dust. He noticed how the girls slept better. He noticed how his own chest felt lighter when he came home in the evenings. Still, he kept his distance. He had learned not to hope too quickly. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by the ranch. The man's eyes lingered on Lena longer than needed. His tone changed when he spoke to her. Thomas felt a tightness in his jaw. "She's helping out," Thomas said firmly. The neighbor shrugged. "Just surprised, that's all." After he left, Lena stood quietly by the sink. "I can go," she said. "I don't want to cause trouble." Thomas turned to her. "You haven't caused any." She met his eyes. "Sometimes just being who I am is enough." He had no answer for that. He only knew he didn't want her to leave. That night after the girls were asleep, Thomas sat at the table while Lena folded laundry. The lamp cast soft shadows across the room. "You don't talk much about your past," he said carefully. She paused, then continued folding. "Some stories hurt more when spoken." He nodded. "I understand that." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. "I lost my wife 3 years ago," he said finally. "Since then, it's just been us." "I'm sorry," Lena said, her voice gentle. "They need more than I can give," he admitted quietly. Lena looked up at him then, really looked. She saw the tired lines on his face, the strength held together by duty and love. She saw a man trying his best, even when he didn't believe it was enough. "They need you," she said. "They just need someone to stand beside you." He swallowed, emotion pressing against his chest. Days turned into weeks. The ranch continued its steady rhythm, but the house changed. It became a place where warmth lived again, where grief was shared instead of hidden. Lena still reminded herself every day not to get too comfortable. She had learned that safety could disappear without warning, but something in her began to heal. She laughed sometimes. She slept without fear. She sang softly while cooking, songs her grandmother once sang. Thomas heard those songs and felt something shift inside him. One evening, a storm rolled in fast and loud. Thunder shook the house. Emily woke crying, terrified. Lena rushed to her room, holding her until her breathing slowed. Rose joined them, clinging tightly. Thomas stood in the doorway, watching Lena calm his daughters with quiet strength and patience. In that moment, a truth he had been avoiding became impossible to ignore. This woman was not just helping around the house. She was bringing life back into it. Later that night, after the storm passed and the girls slept peacefully, Thomas sat alone in the kitchen. His hands rested on the table, his thoughts heavy. He knew the question forming in his mind was not simple. It carried risk, responsibility, change. But as he listened to the quiet house, he realized something else. For the first time in years, it felt like home, and that realization frightened him almost as much as it gave him hope. The change in the house did not go unnoticed by the people outside it. Small towns had a way of watching quietly, then speaking loudly when something felt different. Lena felt those eyes even when no one said a word. When she went into town to buy supplies with Thomas, conversations paused. Some people smiled politely. Others looked away. A few whispered without trying to hide it. Lena kept her head high, but inside old fears stirred. She had lived this before, acceptance that came slowly if at all. Thomas noticed. He did not say much, but when he walked beside her, his steps stayed close. He did not rush her. That small act meant more than he knew. At the ranch, work continued as usual, but tension grew in quiet ways. One afternoon, a ranch hand questioned Thomas about Lena's presence. "People are talking," the man said carefully. "People always talk," Thomas replied. His voice was calm but firm. Still, the words stayed with him. Lena sensed the shift too. She became more careful, working harder, speaking less. At night, when she lay awake, she wondered how long this fragile peace would last. She had begun to care too much, and that scared her. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Emily came running into the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. "They said she doesn't belong here," she cried. Lena knelt immediately. "Who said that?" "Kids in town," Emily whispered. "They said you'll leave like Mama did." The words struck deep. Lena pulled Emily close, holding her gently. "I'm here right now," she said softly, "and right now is real." Thomas stood nearby, his heart heavy with anger and guilt. He had brought Lena into this world of judgment. He had brought his daughters into it too. That night, after the girls were asleep, Thomas sat across from Lena at the table. The lamp flickered softly between them. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't protect you from that." Lena shook her head. "You can't protect people from everything." Silence followed, thick, heavy, honest. "There's something I need to ask you," Thomas said finally. His voice was steady, but his hands were not. Lena looked up, her heart tightening. She had been waiting for this moment, though she did not know what shape it would take. "My daughters," he continued, "they've changed since you came. They laugh again, they sleep better, they feel safe." She listened without interrupting. "I don't want to confuse them," he said. "And I don't want to ask something unfair of you." He took a breath. "But I need to know, could you stay, not just as help, but as family? Could you be the mother my daughters need?" The question hung in the air, fragile and powerful. Lena felt tears rise, but she did not let them fall. She stood slowly, walking to the window. Outside, the land stretched wide and quiet, the same land she had crossed with nothing but hope. "I lost my husband," she said softly. "I lost my home. I promised myself I would never give my heart so easily again." Thomas said nothing. He waited. "I am not trying to replace anyone," she continued, "and I cannot promise a future without pain." He nodded. "Neither can I," she turned to face him. "But I know what it means to love children, to protect them, to teach them strength." Her voice trembled. "I'm just afraid of losing them too." Thomas stood. "So am I." They stood there, two people shaped by loss, facing a choice that could change everything. "I need time," Lena said. "Take all the time you need," he replied. That night, sleep did not come easily to either of them. Over the next days, Lena watched the girls closely. She saw how they reached for her hand without thinking, how they looked for her in a room, how they trusted her with their fears. she also felt the weight of responsibility. Love was not just comfort, it was commitment. It meant staying when things became hard. One afternoon, Lena took the girls outside and taught them a simple song from her childhood. They sang together under the open sky, their voices blending with the wind. Thomas watched from a distance, his eyes full. Later that evening, Lena found him in the barn. "I've made my choice," she said. He turned, his breath catching. "I will stay," she said. "If you will let me do it honestly, with respect for the past and hope for the future." Relief washed over his face, followed by something deeper. Gratitude, fear, hope. "I promise," he said. "We'll face it together." The days ahead would not be easy. Judgment still waited outside the gates, but inside them, something strong had begun to grow. And for the first time since losing everything, Lena felt that her life was not just surviving anymore. It was beginning again. Lena's decision did not change everything overnight, but it changed the way she woke up each morning. She no longer felt like a guest who might be asked to leave. Still, she reminded herself to move carefully. Love, she knew, was something built slowly, like a strong fence around open land. The girls felt the change before anyone else. Emily began calling out for Lena in the mornings without thinking. Rose followed her everywhere, holding her hand when they walked outside. Lena never corrected them or encouraged them too strongly. She let things happen naturally, the way real bonds formed. Thomas watched from a distance, his heart full and cautious at the same time. He had made space for hope once before and lost it. This time he promised himself he would protect it, not rush it. Outside the ranch, not everyone accepted the new reality. A few neighbors stopped visiting. Some conversations in town grew cold. Lena heard things she was not meant to hear, words that questioned her place. Words that tried to turn her into a problem instead of a person. She did not repeat them to the girls. She did not bring them into the house. Instead, she focused on what she could control. She taught the girls small lessons each day: how to listen to the wind, how to show respect to elders, how to clean a space not just to make it tidy, but to make it peaceful. She shared gentle stories from her childhood, never pushing, never forcing them to understand more than they were ready for. One evening, Emily asked a question Lena had been expecting. "Will you leave someday?" Lena knelt in front of her. "I don't plan to," she said honestly, "but if life ever changes, I will always care about you." That answer was enough. Thomas faced his own challenges. Ranch work grew harder. Money was tight. Pressure from the community did not fade. Some men questioned his decisions, his authority, his judgment. He listened. Then he kept going. One night, a strong storm hit the area. The wind howled and rain pounded the roof. The girls woke frightened, running into the hallway. Lena gathered them close, humming softly. Thomas joined them, sitting on the floor, his back against the wall. In that moment, fear passed like the storm itself. What remained was something steady. The next morning, after the skies cleared, Thomas asked Lena to walk with him across the land. They spoke about responsibilities, about expectations, about mistakes they might make. "I don't want you to lose yourself here," he said. "I won't," she replied. "And I don't want you to carry this alone." They agreed to move forward together, one step at a time. Slowly, signs of acceptance appeared. A neighbor brought over fresh bread. A shop owner greeted Lena by name. Not everyone changed, but enough did to soften the edges of fear. The girls grew more confident. They laughed louder. They asked more questions. They stopped looking over their shoulders. One afternoon, Rose fell and scraped her knee. She ran to Lena without hesitation. Lena cleaned the wound carefully, speaking softly until the tears stopped. Thomas watched from the porch, his chest tight with emotion. That night, he realized something important. This was no longer about filling a space left behind. It was about building something new. As days turned into months, routines settled into place. Lena planted a small garden near the house. The girls helped, learning patience as seeds slowly turned into green life. On a quiet evening, the girls sat at the table drawing pictures. One showed 3 figures holding hands. "That's us," Emily said. Lena looked at Thomas. He nodded, unable to speak. The past did not disappear. Grief still came in waves, but it no longer ruled the house. Instead, love did. And love, Lena learned, was not loud or dramatic. It was steady. It stayed. The ranch was no longer just a place of work or survival. It was a home being chosen every single day. Time moved forward quietly, the way it often did on the ranch. Seasons changed without asking permission. Grass dried, then grew green again. The house, once filled with echoes, now carried steady sounds, footsteps, soft voices, small laughter that felt natural instead of surprising. Lena no longer counted her days by survival. She counted them by moments. Morning meals, school talks, evening walks. Little things that together built a life. The girls began calling her Mama one day without planning it. It happened during breakfast. Rose dropped her spoon, laughed, and said the word without thinking. Emily froze, waiting to see what would happen. Lena's hands trembled slightly, but she kept her voice calm. "Yes, sweetheart," Rose smiled, relieved. Emily smiled too. Thomas lowered his eyes, emotion tightening his chest. He did not interrupt. He understood that some things should not be explained or corrected. They should be honored. Lena never asked the girls to call her that. She knew names carried meaning. If it came, it had to come freely. That day, she stepped outside alone and let herself breathe. She looked up at the wide sky and whispered a quiet thank you to the past that had shaped her and the future that had welcomed her. Challenges still came. There were hard days when money felt tight and work felt endless. There were nights when old memories returned, heavy and uninvited. Lena sometimes dreamed of her husband and woke with tears she did not fully understand. Thomas noticed, but he did not push. Instead, he showed up in quiet ways. He made extra coffee. He fixed things she hadn't asked him to fix. He listened when she spoke and stayed silent when she didn't. They never rushed to define what they were to each other. They focused on what they were building together. The community slowly changed too. Not because everyone suddenly understood, but because they saw something real. They saw children who were cared for, a home that felt steady, a woman who worked hard and carried herself with dignity. One afternoon, the school asked Lena to help with a small event. She hesitated, then agreed. When she stood in that room helping children with simple activities, she felt something settle deep inside her. She belonged. Emily and Rose grew taller, stronger, more confident. They spoke openly about their mother who had passed, remembering her with love instead of fear. Lena encouraged those memories, never replacing them, only making space for them. One evening, Emily asked Thomas, "Is it okay to love 2 mothers?" Thomas smiled softly. "Love doesn't have limits," he said. Lena turned away, wiping her eyes. As the years passed, the ranch thrived in quiet ways, not because life became easy, but because it became shared. Problems were faced together. Joys were celebrated together. One spring morning, Lena stood in the garden watching the girls help Thomas repair a fence. She realized something important. She was no longer afraid of losing this life. Even if change came someday, this love had already shaped her forever. That night after the girls were asleep, Thomas sat beside Lena on the porch. The stars were bright above them. "I never thanked you properly," he said. She shook her head. "You gave me a home when I had none." "You gave my daughters a future," he replied. She looked at him then, really looked at him. "We gave each other a chance." They sat in silence, comfortable and honest. Years later, people would talk about the ranch as a place of strength. They would talk about the woman who arrived with nothing and became the heart of it. They would talk about a family that chose each other, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Lena never forgot where she came from. She taught the girls to respect their roots, their stories, and the struggles that made them who they were. On quiet evenings, she told them, "Home isn't where you start, it's where you are loved." And the girls believed her, because she had shown them every single day. What began as a search for work ended as a life reclaimed. Not through grand gestures, but through patience, kindness, and the courage to stay. And that was more than enough.